22-year-old Hwang Jung-rae is stuck inside this Seoul hospital for 2 weeks. With South Korea on high alert over the MERS virus, authorities aren't taking any chances. So although her son comes every day with treats like homemade kimchi, towels, and shampoo, he can only leave them at the back door.
When you break it down to an acronym, it doesn't sound all that bad. Middle East Respiratory Syndrome. However, the illness caused by a specific virus kills upwards of 40% of those it inflicts. And since discovery of the disease almost 3 years ago in Saudi Arabia, MERS has spread, killing anyone from months old to 99 years of age, and remains something of a real mystery to those who could become infected. Our guest is a research physician in the immunology and pathology of human tumors and infectious disease. Also chairman at Merchant Taylor International. Welcome, Bruce Merchant, to MidPoint. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us.
Good afternoon.
Is it fair to say that MERS snuck up on us?
Yes. We didn't even know that it existed until 2 years ago.
How could we be caught so off guard? Because we always hear about so many different agencies that are watching around the world and that we have a good handle on what's happening in certain areas of the world.
In some areas of the world, the handle is pretty strong. In others, it's rather flimsy. And the Arabian Peninsula, it's not the strongest in the world.
With regard then to MERS now, when I said that it really doesn't sound that bad, when we see things like fever, cough, shortness of breath, we hear those for so many other maladies, and a respiratory illness doesn't really, I think, push forward how dangerous this is. Give us an example of why this is much more dangerous than what the simple acronym might tell us.
Well, it is much more dangerous, particularly if you are an elderly person or an infant, small child, or have an immune deficiency or compromised immunity from chemotherapy or something of that sort. So if you're a bit at a disadvantage, MERS can come in and take you down very decisively.
Is there, in your opinion, a true, and I don't want to be alarming here, but let's be honest, after the Ebola crisis and everything else that happened here, Americans and people around the world are looking at things with a askance view. But is there a possibility that MERS becomes a global pandemic issue?
Well, there's always that possibility. I think, however, the way things have been managed in the Republic of Korea, we call it South Korea, have been exemplary. And rather than having a fatality rate in the neighborhood of 30 to 40%, as has been the case in the countries of the Arabian Peninsula, the mortality rate so far in South Korea is closer to 12 or 13%.
What are they doing that we should be learning from?
Well, they're doing a terrific job of quarantining potential contacts of people who have been infected. They did slip up in letting someone who'd been in Saudi Arabia enter the country when he had a fever, and he was the one source of all the infections that they've had. But they recovered and recouped pretty promptly and have done a superb job over the last 2 or 3 weeks.
I mentioned some of those signs of MERS, perhaps like fever, cough, shortness of breath, diarrhea, other things. These are things that so many people can get in so many other little things, so many other smaller events, if you will, illnesses. How do you tell if it's something that's connected to MERS?
Well, that's a very difficult question. And thank goodness this is not flu season, because basically the sorts of symptoms that people have when they come down with MERS are not that different from what many people will have with the flu. MERS commonly gives a higher fever, and it will frequently be associated with a cough and shortness of breath. Well, that's not so strange, but this time of year, fortunately, it is a little strange. We're just fortunate that this epidemic that has struck South Korea didn't happen in the fall or early winter.
I got about 60 seconds left here, Doctor, and here's something that we saw in the Ebola crisis as well. 3 years after the first case, researchers finally preparing to enter clinical tests on a vaccine for the virus. How long is it going to take before something can be ready?
Vaccines are very, very difficult to prove because you can't deliberately infect someone with the disease. It can be done in primates, and there are some special rules that the FDA might employ to approve a vaccine in advance of actually having proof of efficacy in humans. There'll have to be proof of safety, but that's not so difficult.
Can we say that perhaps Saudi Arabia, Dubai, Egypt, Kuwait, Yemen, Oman, Iraq, if you are in these places or know people coming from these places, that's to be wary of, yes?
Absolutely.
All right, here we go, people. We're in another one of those diseases, one of those issues we just have to watch out for, keep everybody posted, let you know when things are available. And by the way, the doctor will tell you the same thing. See your doctor if you have any questions. Dr. Bruce Merchant, a pleasure, sir. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Ed.
My pleasure. Let's hope indeed that we at least can keep people moving and at least thinking ahead. All right, a voice we've been without for 7 years, and who still nails it on politics and a whole lot more. I mentioned him earlier in the show. We will celebrate his life with a little fitting tribute to get the weekend started, or the week started, I should say. MidPoint continues.